The pickup's suspension groaned as I navigated another pothole, dust clouding the windshield despite running the wipers. 3 hours from the nearest town that qualified as civilization, the Montana prairie stretched endlessly in every direction, just yellowed grass, scattered rock formations, and the occasional fence post marking property lines nobody cared about. The GPS had given up 40 minutes ago. Good thing the company's directions were specific. Follow Highway 200 to mile marker 47. Turn north at the bullet-riddled Sinclair sign. Drive until you see the derricks. And there they were, black metal fingers scratching at the sky, pump jacks nodding like massive birds pecking at the earth. The whole operation looked smaller than I'd expected. Maybe a dozen trailers arranged in a rough semicircle, some equipment sheds, and a parking area that was more dirt than gravel. A few trucks sat baking in the afternoon sun. Not exactly the bustling operation the recruiter had described, but the pay was real, and that's what mattered. I parked next to a mud-splattered F-150 and killed the engine. The silence hit immediately. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that made you realize something was missing. No meadowlarks, no grasshoppers buzzing in the heat. Just the rhythmic groan of the pump jacks and the tick of my cooling engine. The main office trailer had seen better decades. Aluminum siding warped from temperature swings, windows clouded with mineral deposits, and a door that hung slightly crooked in its frame. A hand-painted sign read, "Check in here," with an arrow pointing at the door, like I might have been confused about where to go. I knocked and entered without waiting for an answer. Field etiquette from my last job. The inside was exactly what you'd expect. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights that hummed off-key, and the smell of burnt coffee mixed with industrial lubricant. A desk dominated the small space covered in paperwork, safety manuals, and empty styrofoam cups. The man behind the desk looked up from a clipboard, and I got my first look at Nash Singh. Early 40s, built solid, with the kind of weathered competence that came from years of handling problems nobody trained you for. His navy work shirt had "supervisor" embroidered on the pocket, and his eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses were already evaluating me. "Caleb Schmidt?" "That's me." He didn't smile, didn't offer his hand, just reached into a drawer and pulled out a laminated card. "Before we discuss anything else, read this. Memorize it. Follow it." I took the card, expecting standard safety protocols about H2S gas or proper lockout procedures. Instead, I found myself reading something that belonged in a horror movie screenplay. Field rules, mandatory. 1. If you see wildlife watching you, stop what you're doing and return to the trailers immediately. 2. All work stops at sunset, no exceptions. Be inside before dark. 3. If you hear horses at night, do not look outside. 4. Never answer phones that ring between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. 5. After 10 p.m., do not believe anyone who claims there's an emergency. "Is this some kind of hazing thing?" I asked, trying for a laugh that came out forced. Nash's expression didn't change. He stood up, moved around the desk, and grabbed my shoulder. His grip was firm enough to hurt. 3 workers disappeared last month. We found their equipment, but not them. The month before that, 2 more. Their bodies were never recovered. "You're serious. Dead serious." He let go of my shoulder. "Look, I know how it sounds. Every new guy thinks we're trying to scare them. Some figure it's about insurance fraud or keeping people from wandering off. Then they see something, or they don't follow the rules, and if they're lucky, they just quit. If they're not lucky..." He trailed off, returning to his desk. The trailer door banged open. A tall, thin man in his 50s entered, carrying a toolbox that looked too heavy for his scarecrow frame. His hair was completely white, shocking against his weathered face. And his eyes had the 1,000-yard stare I'd seen in war documentaries. "New guy?" he asked Nash, setting down the toolbox with obvious relief. "Caleb Schmidt. Caleb, this is Wayne Young. He's been here longer than anyone except..." "The rules aren't enough anymore," Wayne interrupted. not looking at me, but through me at something that wasn't there. They're learning, adapting. What worked last month might not work tomorrow. Nash's jaw tightened. Wayne, not now. When then? After he sees his first one? After they've already marked him? Wayne turned those unsettling eyes on me. You religious, son? Not particularly. Might want to reconsider. He picked up his toolbox again. They don't like believers much, but they respect the symbols sometimes. Sometimes. He left without another word. Nash rubbed his temples. Wayne's been here 8 years. It's affected him, but he's not wrong. Things have been escalating lately. Things? You'll understand soon enough, or you'll quit, either way. He pulled out a work assignment sheet. You're checking pressure gauges on the northern pumps today. Basic stuff. Record the readings, note any fluctuations, check for leaks. You know the drill from your last field? Yeah, standard maintenance. Good. Here's what's not standard. You start now, you're back here by sunset. I don't care if you're in the middle of something. I don't care if you've only checked half the pumps. When that sun starts getting low, you drop everything and return. Clear? Crystal, he handed me a radio. Channel 3 for regular communication. Channel 7 for emergencies. If you need to use 7, we'll know it's real. I clipped the radio to my belt, pocketed the laminated rules, and headed for the door. Schmidt, Nash called after me. The rules exist because people died learning them. Every single one costs lives. Respect that. The northern pumps were a 15-minute walk from the trailers, following a dirt road worn by truck tires and erosion. The afternoon sun beat down hard, but the air felt wrong, too still, too empty. The pump jacks continued their mechanical rhythm, but even they seemed subdued, like they were trying not to attract attention. I'd worked oil fields in North Dakota and Texas. There was always noise. Trucks coming and going, workers shouting over equipment, the constant industrial symphony of extraction. Here, it was just me and the machines and that oppressive quiet. The first pump station was routine, pressure normal, no visible leaks, equipment functioning within parameters. I logged the readings in my notebook and moved to the next one, then the third. Everything normal, everything quiet. At the fourth station, I found the boot prints, fresh ones, maybe a day old, leading away from the pump toward the open prairie. Work boots, size 10 or 11 with that distinctive tread pattern Wolverines have. They walked straight out from the equipment, no hesitation, no wandering. Purposeful. I followed them about 30 yards before they just stopped. Not like the person turned around, there were no return prints. Not like they'd been picked up. No vehicle tracks, no disturbance in the grass. The prints simply ended mid-stride, as if whoever made them had been deleted from existence. The temperature dropped. Not gradually, but all at once, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. My breath came out in visible puffs despite the sun still blazing overhead. The pump jack's rhythm seemed to slow, each groan lasting longer than it should. Then I heard the breathing. It came from the storage tank 20 feet to my left. Deep, rhythmic inhalations and exhalations that matched no human pattern. Too long, too deep, with a wet quality that made my skin crawl. The tank was sealed, had been for months according to the maintenance tags. Nothing should have been inside. The breathing got louder, closer, though the tank hadn't moved. I found myself backing away, slowly at first, then faster. The breathing followed, not from the tank anymore, but from the air itself, surrounding me. I ran. Not panicked flight, but a controlled retreat that turned into a jog, then a run as the breathing seemed to pursue me back toward the trailers. The temperature returned to normal as suddenly as it had dropped, and the breathing faded. But I didn't slow down until I could see the cluster of buildings. Nash was standing outside the office trailer, checking his watch. "You're back early." Yeah, I stopped, unsure how to explain what had happened without sounding insane. "You saw something?" Not a question. Heard something, and there were boot prints that just ended. He nodded like this was expected. Come inside. Emily's treating Wayne. The trailer's interior felt different now, less like a rundown office and more like a bunker. Emily Hudson was wrapping Wayne's left hand with practiced efficiency. 3 parallel gashes ran from his wrist to his knuckles, too evenly spaced to be accidental. What happened? I asked. Wayne looked at me with those hollow eyes. Followed all the rules, every single one. Still got me while I was checking the eastern perimeter. Came out of nowhere, moved like smoke, struck like solid iron. Wayne was lucky, Emily said, securing the bandage with medical tape. Usually when they break the rules to attack, they don't leave survivors. They? I looked between the 3 of them. What are we talking about here? Nash and Emily exchanged a look, the kind of wordless communication that comes from shared experience with things that shouldn't exist. You'll find out, Nash said finally. Everyone does eventually. The question is whether you'll last long enough to learn the new rules. New rules? Wayne laughed, a sound like grinding gears. Oh, son. The rules we gave you are just the basics, the ones that usually work. But they're changing, learning what we expect. Soon enough, those 5 rules won't mean anything. Emily finished packing her medical supplies. The gashes are clean, Wayne. No infection risk. But if you start feeling strange, stranger than usual, come see me immediately. Wayne flexed his bandaged hand. Define strange in this place. Nobody laughed. Emily left first, heading toward what I assumed was the medical trailer. Wayne followed, muttering something about checking the generators before dark. Nash turned to me. You did good today. Coming back when things felt wrong, that's the right instinct. Most new guys try to tough it out, prove they're not scared. Those are the ones who disappear. What are we dealing with here, Nash? Really? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at something through the window. I don't know. None of us do. We just know they're out there, they're getting bolder, and the only thing keeping us alive is following rules we don't understand. Then why stay? Money's good, and somebody has to do it. If we all left, they'd just send new crews who don't know the rules. At least we can try to keep people alive, document what works, what doesn't. He pulled out a folder, handed it to me. Your housing assignment, Trailer 7. Get settled, get some rest. Tomorrow's shift starts at dawn. I took the folder. Any rules about the trailers? Lock your door. Keep your lights on. And if you hear knocking after 10 p.m., don't answer no matter who says they are. Walking to Trailer 7, I passed other workers heading to their quarters. Nobody made eye contact. Everyone moved with purpose, checking the sun's position like their lives depended on it. Maybe they did. Trailer 7 was small but clean. A bed, a desk, a tiny bathroom, and a kitchenette. Someone had scratched symbols into the door frame, crosses mixed with other religious icons I didn't recognize. The previous occupant had left a Bible on the nightstand, pages marked with dozens of tabs. I sat on the bed, pulled out the laminated rules, and read them again. 5 simple statements that apparently meant the difference between living and vanishing. Outside, the sun was starting its descent toward the horizon, painting the prairie in shades of gold and red. Somewhere in the distance, I could swear I heard horses. The valve was being a complete bastard. 3 days into this job, and I was already wrestling with equipment that should have been replaced during the Bush administration. The first one. Rust flaked off in my hands as I worked the wrench, and every turn produced a squeal that made my teeth hurt. The sun was getting low, maybe an hour until I'd need to head back, but I wanted to finish this one thing. Prove I could handle the work, even if the work came with a side of existential horror. That's when I saw the deer. 50 yards out, just standing in the grass, watching me. Not grazing, not moving, just watching. Its head was turned directly toward me, ears forward, completely still. Rule 1. If you see wildlife watching you, stop what you're doing and return to the trailers immediately. I dropped the wrench. It clanged against the pipe, the sound carrying across the empty field. The deer didn't flinch, didn't even blink. I started walking back toward the trailers, trying to look casual, like I just remembered something I needed to do. The deer moved with me, not following exactly. It maintained that exact 50-yard distance, matching my pace perfectly. When I sped up, it sped up. When I slowed, it slowed. Its legs weren't moving right. I couldn't figure out what was wrong at first. Then it hit me. They were moving, but not enough for how fast it was traveling. Like it was on a treadmill set to the wrong speed, its hooves barely touching the ground. I walked faster. The deer kept pace, gliding over the uneven terrain without stumbling, without adjusting its gait for the dips and rises. Its eyes caught light that wasn't there. The sky was thick with clouds, but those eyes shined like someone was pointing a flashlight at them from inside its skull. Then its neck bent sideways. Not the way a deer looks around, but sideways, like someone had broken it and it hadn't noticed yet. The head stayed focused on me while the neck made a right angle that belonged in a geometry textbook, not on a living animal. I ran. Forget looking casual, forget maintaining dignity. I sprinted toward the main trailer, my boots slipping on loose gravel. Behind me, still exactly 50 yards, the deer thing kept pace. I could hear it now, or thought I could. Not hoofbeats, but something wet and sliding, like someone dragging a mop across concrete. The trailer door was locked. I pounded on it, looking back to see the deer had stopped at the edge of the equipment yard, still watching, its neck now bent in two places. "It's Caleb, open up!" Locks turned, multiple locks I hadn't noticed before, and Nash yanked me inside. Mildred Warner was already pulling the blinds shut, her movements quick and practiced. The door slammed behind me, and Nash threw every deadbolt. "Eastern perimeter?" Nash asked. "Yeah, how did you—" "They always come from the east first, always testing that side." He moved to another window, checking the blinds were completely sealed. "Mildred, kill the outside lights." She flipped a switch and the security lights around the trailer went dark. Through a crack in the blinds, I could see the deer thing had moved closer, maybe 20 yards now, circling the trailer in slow, measured steps. "Why aren't we keeping the lights on?" I asked. "Light attracts them once they're already here," Mildred said, her voice calm like we were discussing grocery lists. "But electricity in the walls keeps them out. As long as the generator runs, we're safe." The deer completed one circle, then another. On the third pass, something started happening to its hide. It rippled, then began sliding off in sheets, like someone peeling wet wallpaper. Underneath was something pale, the color of a fish belly, with too many joints in all the wrong places. "Don't look directly at it," Nash warned, but I couldn't turn away. The thing wearing the deer's skin like a loose coat was maybe 7 feet tall, elongated in ways that made my eyes water trying to track its proportions. It moved to the trailer's wall and I heard scratching, long, deliberate scratches along the aluminum siding. The lights flickered. "No, no, no," Nash muttered, heading for the door. "The generator—" The lights went out completely. Emergency battery backups kicked in, casting everything in a sick green glow from the exit signs. "Someone cut the fuel lines," Nash said, examining the generator through the window with a flashlight. "Half of them are severed. Clean cuts, recent." "Someone? You mean something?" "No," Mildred said quietly. "Someone. The things outside can't use tools like that. This was done from inside the camp." Nash grabbed a toolbox from under the desk. "I need 10 minutes to patch the lines and restart it. Maybe 15. The scratching moved along the wall, testing different spots. Through the thin trailer walls, I could hear breathing. Wet, labored breathing that reminded me of what I'd heard at the pump station my first day. "There." Mildred pointed to the ventilation grate near the ceiling. Long, pale fingers were pushing through the slats, feeling around the edges. Too many knuckles on each finger, bending in spirals. Nash worked on the generator outside while Mildred and I watched those fingers explore the grate's frame, testing for weakness. They found the screws, began working them counterclockwise. Smart. Methodical. "They're learning," Mildred said, like she was noting the weather. "Last month they'd just pushed. Now they know how screws work." The first screw fell to the floor with a tiny ping, then the second. "Nash!" I shouted. "Almost there!" The third screw dropped. The grate hung by one corner now, and something pressed against it from outside. Something with a face that wasn't quite a face. Features arranged by someone who'd only had faces described to them secondhand. The generator roared to life. Lights blazed through the trailer, and the thing at the grate recoiled with a sound like steam escaping a broken pipe. I caught a glimpse of its mouth, rows and rows of human teeth, adult and child sizes mixed together, arranged in perfect spirals, before it pulled back through the vent and disappeared. Nash stumbled back inside, locking the door behind him. His hands were shaking as he washed them in the small sink, the water running pink from where he'd cut himself on the fuel lines. "It's gone," I said, checking through the blinds. The deer skin lay in the dirt like discarded laundry, but the thing itself had vanished. "For now," Nash corrected. He pulled out a notebook, started writing. Eastern approach, deer disguise, attempted entry through ventilation, showed tool use comprehension. He looked up at me. "This is the third time this week they've tried something new." "The sabotage could be one of us," Mildred said. "Someone who's been here too long, heard too many phone calls, started thinking the wrong thoughts. Or could be someone who thinks letting them in might make them leave the rest of us alone." "That's insane." Nash laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sanity's relative out here. Give it a month, you'll understand." He kept writing in his notebook, documenting every detail. "The rules need updating. They're learning faster than we can adapt. What worked last week might kill you tomorrow." "Then why stay?" I asked, though I was already learning the answer. The money. The obligation to warn others. The terrible knowledge that leaving meant someone else would take your place. Someone who didn't know what we knew. "Because someone has to document this," Nash said. "Someone has to figure out the new rules before everyone dies learning them the hard way." Outside, the pump jacks continued their rhythm, and somewhere in the distance I could swear I heard something walking on too many legs, dragging something that might have been skin. The phone wasn't there when I went to bed. I'm absolutely certain about that. I'd checked the whole trailer before turning in, paranoid habit from 3 days of this place, and the desk had been empty except for my notebook and the Bible the last guy left behind. But at 2:47 a.m., according to the digital clock's angry red numbers, there it sat. Black rotary phone, the old kind with the heavy handset and cloth-wrapped cord, and it was ringing. Not the electronic trill of modern phones, but that deep, mechanical bell that belonged in old movies. The sound drilled into my skull, yanking me from dreams I couldn't quite remember but knew had been wrong. Dreams about things moving under the ground. I sat up, sheets soaked with sweat despite the trailer's chill. The phone kept ringing. 4 rings, 5, 6. It should have stopped by now. Even old phones gave up eventually. Rule 4 burned in my mind. Never answer phones that ring between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. But this wasn't my phone. I didn't have a phone. The trailer didn't come with one, and my cell had been dead since I arrived. The field somehow killing its battery faster than I could charge it. 7 rings. 8. My feet found the floor before I'd made the decision to stand. The linoleum was ice cold, shocking me more awake. The phone sat there, black plastic gleaming in the moonlight through the blinds, its cord disappearing into the wall where no phone jack existed. 9 rings. I picked it up. Even now, I can't explain why. Maybe because the ringing was getting louder, threatening to crack my teeth. Maybe because some part of me needed to know. Maybe because 3 days of impossible things had already broken my ability to make good choices. "Hello?" Static first, like tuning between radio stations, then breathing, human breathing, labored and wet. And then, Cal? Jesus Christ, Cal, is that you? My legs nearly gave out. I knew that voice better than my own. Had heard it every day for 18 years until I left for college. Had argued with it the last time we spoke. Dad? Cal, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for so long. Listen to me, I don't have much time. You're dead. The words came out flat, automatic. You disappeared. Wyoming. The search teams found your truck, but I'm not dead, son. I'm just somewhere else. Somewhere below. His voice crackled, faded, then came back stronger. The fishing trip was a cover. I was investigating something, following reports about missing workers, strange formations. I found it, Cal. Found what they're drilling toward. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely hold the handset. This wasn't possible. But then again, nothing here was possible. Remember when you were 7? He continued, urgent now. You broke Mom's ceramic angel, the one her mother gave her. You came to me crying, and I helped you glue it back together. We never told her, called it our secret angel project. The trailer spun. Nobody knew about that. Nobody. Mom had found out years later after she left, but Dad and I had never told another soul. Where are you? My voice cracked like I was 17 again. Underground. Deep underground. There's... Christ, Cal, there's walls here that aren't walls. They're alive. They pulse. And the sky. There's a sky down here, but it rains oil. Black rain that burns but doesn't kill. He paused, and I heard something wet moving in the background. It collects people, Cal. This thing, this place. It collects us like specimens. Keeps us conscious. Keeps us aware. I'll get help. I'll call... No! The urgency in his voice made me pull the phone away from my ear. No outside help. They know. The company knows. They've always known. They're feeding it. Feeding what? I don't have a name for it. Nobody does. It's older than names. Older than... The static surged, drowning him out. When it cleared, his voice was different. Strained. The coordinates. Write this down. 47 degrees. The static exploded into voices. Multiple voices, all talking at once. I heard my grandmother, dead 6 years from cancer. My high school girlfriend Ashley, who'd wrapped her car around a tree senior year. My uncle Pete, drowned in Lake Superior. All of them talking, overlapping, describing the same thing. Walls of meat that watch you. The oil isn't oil, it's blood. It's always been blood. Down here in the dark, where the earth has mouths. It knows you now, Cal. It knows your name. I slammed the handset down, but the voices continued, pouring from the earpiece like water. The phone rang again immediately, the sound now coming from inside my skull. Someone pounded on my trailer door. Open up now, don't answer it again. Wayne's voice, high with panic. I stumbled to the door, fumbled with the locks. He stood there in boxers and an undershirt, his white hair wild, eyes wider than I'd ever seen them. You answered it. Not a question. He grabbed my arm, his fingers ice cold. We need to get you to Emily. Now, move. He dragged me outside. The night air hit like a physical thing, thick and wrong. The pump jacks had stopped. I'd never heard them stop before. The silence was complete except for our footsteps and something else, something rhythmic coming from below the ground. How did you know? I asked as we ran. The ground hums when someone answers. Different frequency for each person. Yours sounds like screaming. The main trailer's lights were all on. Nash and Emily already inside. Mildred was there too, spreading papers across the desk. They all looked up when we burst in, and Emily immediately pointed to a chair. Sit. Head back. I sat. She shined a pen light in my eyes, then my ears. Her expression tightened. You're bleeding. I touched my ear. My fingers came away red. The frequency. she said, grabbing gauze. "The voices operate at a pitch that damages human tissue. How long did you listen?" "Maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3. Nash pulled up a chair across from me. "Describe everything, every word." I told them about Dad, about the details only he could know, about the other voices, about the place they described. Nash's expression grew darker with every word. "Your father," he said when I finished. "When did he disappear?" 2 years ago, fishing trip in Wyoming." Nash and Mildred exchanged a look that made my stomach drop. "There's no fishing in Wyoming that matches what you're describing," Mildred said gently. "But there is another oil field. Abandoned now. The company shut it down after losing 37 workers in a single month." Emily finished with my ears, the gauze already spotted with blood. "The bleeding should stop in a few hours. But Caleb, you need to understand something. The phone calls, they're not really from the people you knew. But the details, it reads us," Nash said. "Whatever's down there, it can pull memories, voices, everything that makes a person who they were. But the original person," he shook his head, "they're gone. What's left is just an echo it uses as bait." "You said it collects people." "We think so." Mildred pulled out a map, hand-drawn and covered in red X marks. 17 confirmed disappearances after phone calls. Each one received specific coordinates, always different. Each one who went to investigate never came back. I studied the map. The X marks formed a rough circle around the field, with gaps that seemed almost deliberate. "It's building something," I said, not sure where the thought came from. "The pattern, it's not random." Wayne leaned forward. "You see it too. Good. Means you might survive longer than most." "What happens if I don't go to the coordinates?" "Then it tries other methods," Nash said. "The calls get worse, more frequent. Sometimes people report seeing their loved ones outside their trailers. Sometimes they wake up halfway to the coordinates with no memory of leaving their beds." "Jesus." "It's marked you now," Wayne said. "The thing below knows your frequency, your pattern. You're part of its collection, even if you're still walking around up here." "So what do I do?" "You follow the rules," Nash said. "All of them. The original 5, and the new ones we're learning. You never answer another call. You tell us immediately if you hear voices, see people who shouldn't be here, or feel compelled to go anywhere specific. And you pray," Mildred added, "that it finds someone more interesting before it decides to collect you properly." The phone in my trailer rang again. We could hear it from the main office, impossible as that was with the distance and walls between us. It rang 13 times before stopping. "It'll try again tomorrow night," Wayne said, "and the night after. Each time with better bait, more convincing stories." "How do you know?" He pulled down his shirt collar, revealing scars on his neck that looked like they'd been made by fingers that had too many joints. "Because I answered once too, 3 years ago. Heard my brother's voice. He'd been dead for a decade, but I heard him clear as day, begging for help. What happened? I went to the coordinates, woke up 2 days later in the medical trailer with these scars and no memory of what happened in between. But sometimes, in dreams, I remember pieces, walls that breathe, skies that shouldn't exist underground. And the thing that spoke with my brother's voice, while it tried to pull me down into places that aren't supposed to be." The phone rang again. This time it sounded like it was coming from directly beneath the trailer. "Pack your things," Nash said. "You're bunking in here tonight. Tomorrow we're moving you to a different trailer. Sometimes that helps, breaks the connection for a while." I nodded, but we all knew it was temporary. The thing below had my number now, in every sense that mattered. And somewhere in the dark, in places that shouldn't exist, something that might have once been, my father was waiting with coordinates that would lead me down to join him. The phone kept ringing as I gathered my things, and I swear I could hear him laughing. The knock came at 10:47 p.m., 3 sharp raps, then Nash's voice muffled through the trailer door. "Caleb! Get out here, now!" I was still awake, reading through the field logs Mildred had given me, trying to find patterns in the disappearances. Through the small window beside the door, I could see Nash standing in the pool of security light, his supervisor's shirt dark with what looked like blood across the chest. He was gesturing frantically, mouthing words I couldn't quite make out. Something about the main pump station. Rule 5. After 10 p.m., don't believe anyone claiming there's an emergency. But this was Nash. Nash who'd saved me from the deer thing. Nash who'd spent 3 weeks teaching me how to survive this place. His face was twisted with panic I'd never seen before, not even when the generator died. I cracked the door, keeping the chain on. "Nash, what's—" His hand shot through the gap, grabbing my wrist. His fingers were ice cold, colder than the night air, colder than anything living should be. "No time. Equipment failure at the main station. Craig and 2 others are trapped. The whole thing could blow." Craig, the new guy I'd been training, my responsibility. "Let me get my boots. Now!" Nash yanked harder, and I heard the chain straining. His face pressed close to the gap, and even in the bad light, I could see genuine fear in his eyes. Every second matters. I unhooked the chain. Nash's grip shifted to my arm the moment I stepped outside, his fingers wrapping all the way around my bicep. He pulled me away from the trailer, toward the darkness beyond the security lights. His pace was urgent but strange, too smooth, like he was gliding rather than walking. "Nash, slow down. I can't. Hurry!" His voice was flat now, all the panic gone. His face stayed forward as he pulled me along, not turning to look at me even as he spoke. "They're dying. Can't you hear them screaming?" I couldn't hear anything except the pump jacks and my own heartbeat. The main station was lit up normal in the distance, no signs of fire or disaster. "Nash, I don't think—" His grip tightened until I gasped. The bones in my arm ground together under his fingers, but his face stayed blank, peaceful almost, even as he kept talking about emergency and death and hurry, hurry, hurry. We passed the equipment shed, heading toward a section of the field I'd never been to before. The security lights didn't reach here. In the moonlight, I could see pump jacks, but they were wrong. Older, their metal eaten away in patterns that looked almost deliberate, like something had been growing through them. That's when I noticed Nash's shadow. It fell toward the security lights behind us, not away from them. The shadow reached back the way we'd come, stretching impossibly long, as if it was trying to return to the light while Nash dragged me deeper into the dark. "Nash." My voice came out as a whisper. "Your shadow. Don't look at shadows." His head started to turn toward me, but it kept turning, rotating past the point where his neck should have stopped it. "Shadows lie." I tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. His head had turned completely backward now, Nash's face looking at me while his body walked forward. His expression was still blank, serene, even as his neck made sounds like twisting rope. A light bobbed in the distance, a lantern coming from the direction of the real trailers. The real Nash's voice carried across the field. "Caleb, where are you? Don't go with it. Run." The thing holding my arm tilted its backward head, considering. Then Nash's face started to slide. Not an expression. The actual face, sliding down like paint in the rain. Underneath was something that had too many eyes, arranged in perfect spirals, each one reflecting the distant lantern light differently. The real Nash was sprinting toward us now, lantern raised high. "Let him go, you piece of—" The thing's grip loosened just slightly, maybe distracted by the approaching light. I yanked free and stumbled backward. It reached for me again, Nash's face still dripping off its spiral-eyed head, but the real Nash was there, swinging the lantern like a weapon. The thing recoiled from the flame, making a sound like steam escaping. Its form rippled, Nash's appearance sliding off completely. For a second, I saw what it really was. Something tall and wrong, with too many joints bending in directions that made my eyes water. "Run!" Real Nash grabbed my shoulder. Warm hands, human hands, and shoved me toward the trailers. We ran. Behind us, that steam whistle shriek got louder, and when I looked back, the thing was following. Sometimes it wore Nash's face again. Sometimes Wayne's. Sometimes faces I didn't recognize. Maybe workers from before my time, their features perfectly captured except for the eyes. Always those spiral eyes. It moved wrong, joints bending backward and forward simultaneously, covering ground in lurches that didn't match its speed. The old pump jacks we passed seemed to lean toward it, their corroded metal reflecting its shape in ways that metal shouldn't bend light. Nash fumbled with his keys at the main trailer door. The thing was 20 yards away, 15, 10. The door opened and we tumbled inside. Nash slammed it shut, threw the deadbolts, then collapsed against it, breathing hard. "The window!" he gasped. "Check the..." The thing's face, currently wearing mine, pressed against the glass. It smiled with my mouth, tapped on the window with fingers that had too many knuckles. Then it walked away, disappearing into the dark. Nash pulled himself to his feet, still breathing hard. They're getting better. The mimics. Used to be they could only copy voices, maybe basic appearance from a distance. Now, he gestured at the window. Direct light's the only thing that reveals them anymore. Their shadows fall wrong, temperature's wrong, but in the dark, perfect copies. It knew about Craig, knew I'd been training him. They watch us, learn who we trust, who we'd break rules for. Nash went to the coffee maker, his hands shaking as he poured 2 cups. 3 nights ago, one came to Wayne's trailer as Emily. Said she needed help with a medical emergency. He almost went. What stopped him? She was wearing her stethoscope backward. Small detail, but Wayne notices everything. Nash handed me the coffee. It was hours old, bitter, but the warmth helped. They're learning, but they're not perfect. Still make mistakes. What happens if they get you? If you go with them? Nash stared into his coffee. Thompson went with one 6 months ago. Thought it was his brother come to visit. We found Thompson 3 days later in the old pump section, the one you just saw. He was integrated. Integrated? Built into one of the pumps. Still alive, technically. His nervous system was threaded through the machinery, his blood mixing with the oil. He was conscious until Emily. Nash trailed off. She did what she had to. My coffee mug shook in my hands. Why copy us? What's the point? Maybe they're trying to understand us. Maybe it's hunting behavior like those fish that use lures. Or maybe... Nash looked at the window where the thing had stood. Maybe they just think it's funny. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the pump jack's rhythm. Somewhere out there, the thing that had worn Nash's face was probably trying other trailers, other faces, looking for someone who'd break Rule 5. "How do I know you're really Nash?" I asked. He laughed, short and bitter. "You don't. That's the point. After 10 p.m., you don't trust anyone outside your locked door, even if it's really me, even if there's really an emergency, because the one time you're wrong," he gestured at the window, "you end up integrated. But you came for me tonight with the lantern. I was checking the perimeter and saw it leading you away. That was stupid of me, breaking my own rules. Next time I won't. Can't afford to." He looked at me directly. "Next time, even if you see me being torn apart outside your window, you stay inside. Understand?" I nodded, though we both knew how hard that would be. The mimics were learning our psychology, our bonds, our breaking points. They knew exactly who to copy, exactly what to say. "You can sleep here tonight," Nash said. "Couch is uncomfortable, but it's better than walking back in the dark." As I settled onto the cracked leather couch, Nash turned off most of the lights, leaving just one fluorescent flickering over the desk. Through the window, I could see shapes moving between the trailers. Some might have been workers heading to night shift. Others might have been things wearing their faces. "Nash?" I called out. "Yeah? The old pump section, why haven't you destroyed it?" A long pause. "Company won't let us. Says it's still producing. Whatever's in those corroded pumps mixed with whoever's been integrated, it makes a special grade of oil. Sells for 10 times the normal price." Jesus. "Yeah." His voice was tired. "Now you're starting to understand. We're not just bait, Caleb. We're ingredients." I lay there in the dark, listening to the pump jacks, thinking about Thompson threaded through machinery, about the thing that had worn Nash's face so perfectly, about Craig out there somewhere, probably asleep in his trailer, not knowing how many things were learning his face right now. At 11:23 p.m., someone knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps. "Nash?" Craig's voice, muffled but recognizable. "You in there? I can't find Caleb. His trailer's empty and there's blood on his door." Nash and I looked at each other across the dark room. Craig should be asleep. Craig didn't know which trailer was the main office. Craig's shadow, visible through the blinds, fell in 3 different directions at once. The knocking continued for 47 minutes before it finally stopped. In the morning, we found handprints on the door that had too many fingers, and Craig's boot prints in the dirt. Even though Craig wore sneakers, the mimics were definitely getting better. The sun was already kissing the horizon when I realized I'd lost track of time. The pressure gauge readings had been weird all afternoon, fluctuating in patterns that almost made sense if you didn't think about them too hard, and I'd gotten absorbed trying to document them in my notebook. That's when I heard the horses. Not the mechanical rhythm of pump jacks that sometimes sounded like hoofbeats if you'd been out here too long. Real horses. Multiple sets of hooves hitting dirt in perfect synchronization, getting closer. Rule 3 burned through my brain. If you hear horses at night, don't look for them. But it wasn't night yet. The sun was still visible, a sliver of orange bleeding across the prairie. Maybe 5 minutes of daylight left. The trailers were a 10-minute walk. The hoofbeats got louder. They were coming from the north, between me and safety. I ran anyway. What else could I do? Rule 2 said get inside before dark, and that seemed more important than avoiding whatever was riding horses out here. My boots slipped on loose gravel as I sprinted toward the cluster of trailers, their lights just starting to flicker on in the growing dusk. Except the lights weren't coming on. The security floods that should have been blazing by now stayed dark. The trailer windows were black squares against the dying light. Even the constant hum of the generator was gone. The hoofbeats changed direction, circling now, keeping pace with me. I could hear breathing. Not from the horses, but from whatever was riding them. Wet, excited breathing that reminded me of the thing in the storage tank my first day. I risked a look. I shouldn't have looked. They were maybe 30 yards away, 5 riders on things that might have been horses once. The animals' bodies had been stretched and reformed, their legs too long and bending in too many places, their necks twisted into spirals that still somehow supported heads with too many eyes. The riders were worse. Pale figures that seemed to be growing out of their mounts rather than sitting on them. Their lower bodies fused into the horses' backs, skin flowing together like melted wax. The riders wore cloaks that fluttered in wind I couldn't feel. As they got closer, I realized the cloaks were made of human skin, still bearing tattoos and scars I recognized. Johnson's eagle tattoo across one shoulder, Martinez's birthmark, people who'd disappeared over the last months, their skins worn like trophies. My phone rang. I didn't have my phone. I'd left it charging in my trailer like always. But there it was in my pocket, vibrating against my leg, playing my dad's ringtone, the stupid Johnny Cash song he'd loved. The riders spoke in unison, 5 mouths moving with the voices of the missing. "Answer it, Caleb. He's waiting. He has so much to tell you." I kept running, but they were faster, circling tighter. The phone kept ringing, the song getting louder, distorting. "New rules," the riders said, still in perfect unison. "Stay in the dark where it's safe. Answer the phone to hear the truth. Dig deeper to find your father. Trust what you see because your eyes are opening." The sun dropped below the horizon. True darkness fell like a curtain. The riders laughed with voices I recognized. Thompson, who Nash said had been integrated into the pumps. Vasquez, who'd walked into the prairie following his dead wife's voice. Others I'd only known from Mildred's logs. "You're learning," they said. "Soon you'll understand. Soon you'll join the harvest." Lights exploded across the field, harsh, white, beautiful. Wayne stood 20 feet away with a portable generator on a hand truck, 2 massive floodlights mounted on top. The light hit the riders like a physical force, their stolen skin cloaks smoking, their fused bodies writhing. "Move your ass," Wayne shouted, but his voice sounded wrong, strained. I ran toward him, but something was off about his shadow in the blazing light. It fell in the wrong direction, and as I watched, it moved independently, reaching for the generator's kill switch. "Wayne, your shadow." The generator sputtered. The lights flickered, showing the riders in strobe effect snapshots. Closer, reaching, their human horse bodies separating and reforming into configurations that made my eyes bleed. In one flash, I saw them as they really were. Not riders at all, but a single organism pretending to be multiple entities, connected under the ground by root-like structures that pulsed with black oil. An engine roared. Emily's truck burst through the circle of riders, Mildred hanging out the passenger window with something in her hands. Road flares, but when Nash threw them from the truck bed, they burned wrong, too bright, too hot, leaving afterimages of symbols that hurt to remember. "Get in!" Emily shouted, slamming the brakes. Wayne's shadow reached the kill switch. The lights died. In the darkness, I felt things brushing past me. Too many limbs, too many teeth, textures that shouldn't exist. The phone in my pocket rang louder, and now it was my mother's ringtone, then Ashley's, then voices I didn't recognize. Nash grabbed my arm, hauling me into the truck bed as Emily gunned it. The riders, or the thing pretending to be riders, followed, their forms completely unstable now, melting and reforming, sometimes horses, sometimes people, sometimes geometric patterns that violated three-dimensional space. "The company knows," Nash shouted over the engine, throwing more flares. "They've always known. 50 years of drilling here, 50 years of feeding these things workers." A rider thing lunged at the truck, its arm extending impossibly long. Nash hit it with a flare, and it recoiled with a sound like screaming metal. "The oil here, it's not normal crude," he continued, reloading flares from a military surplus box. "It has properties that make it worth billions to the right buyers, defense contractors mostly, black budget projects." We hit a bump, went airborne for a second. When we landed, I saw Wayne in the side mirror, still standing by his dead generator, but his shadow was walking away, heading toward the old pump section. "Every rule we learn costs lives," Nash said. Thompson died learning about the integration. Martinez figured out the phone frequencies. Johnson discovered what happens if you follow the riders. He gestured at the things still pursuing us, their forms becoming more chaotic, more impossible. Corporate keeps detailed records. When too many of us die, they send fresh workers. Just enough to keep these things busy, focused on the field instead of spreading. "We're bait," I said. "We're bait that gets paid very well to pretend we don't know we're bait." Nash threw his last flare. "Until we can't pretend anymore." The riders were falling back, unable to maintain cohesion this far from whatever they'd emerged from. In the distance, the field's lights flickered back on. Wayne must have fixed the main generator, or something wearing Wayne's shape had. Emily drove us to the main trailer where Craig Gonzalez was standing outside, looking confused and scared. "What the hell was that? I heard horses, and then the lights went out and—" "Get inside," Nash ordered. "All of you." As we filed into the trailer, I pulled the phone from my pocket. It was my phone after all, just changed somehow. The screen showed 17 missed calls from Dad, 3 from Mom, and 1 from you. "It's evolving," Mildred said quietly, noticing the phone. "Learning to use our technology, our connections, our love against us." Through the window, I could see Wayne walking back from the generator, his shadow now perfectly normal, matching his movements exactly. He gave us a thumbs up, but something in his eyes had changed. They reflected light differently now, like an animal's eyes in headlights. "New rule," Nash said, pulling out his notebook. "If the horses come before full dark, don't trust the lights. They might be part of the trap." I thought about the riders, about the oil worth billions, about Wayne's shadow walking away on its own. The company would send more workers when we died. The oil would keep flowing. The things below would keep feeding. And somewhere under our feet, my father's voice was getting closer, rising through pipes and roots and things that shouldn't exist. Carrying coordinates I was starting to hear even when the phone wasn't ringing. The horses were gone, but I could still hear them breathing. The new guy showed up 3 weeks after the horses, pulling into the field in a Chevy Colorado with Texas plates and music blasting through open windows. Craig Gonzalez, 26, petroleum engineering degree from some technical school in El Paso. He had that same confident walk I'd had, that same smirk when he saw our collection of trailers baking in the Montana sun. I watched him from the office window, my hands trembling against my coffee mug. 3 weeks of 2-hour sleep cycles will do that to you. 3 weeks of jumping at every sound, checking shadows, counting the fingers on everyone's hands. 3 weeks since Nash walked out to investigate lights near the southern wells and never came back. We found his boots the next morning, standing upright in the dirt like he'd just stepped out of them. Inside, the left one, was a note in his handwriting. "The rules are obsolete. They're inside now." Wayne ran things now, though "ran" was generous. He mostly sat in Nash's old chair, staring at maps of the field, his hair gone shock white after whatever he'd seen in the storage tunnels. He'd been down there for 6 hours, came back unable to speak for 2 days. When words finally came, all he said was, "They're farming us." Craig knocked on the trailer door, 3 sharp raps that made my whole body tense. 3 raps was how the mimics knocked. But it was 2 p.m., broad daylight, and his shadow fell in the right direction. "Come in," Wayne called, not looking up from his maps. Craig entered with that easy confidence, designer sunglasses pushed up on his head, looking around the office like he was evaluating real estate. His eyes landed on the wall of rules, the original 5+17 editions in different handwriting, some in Nash's neat print, others in my shaky permanent marker, a few in what looked like dried blood but was actually just rust-colored paint. We hoped. "So," Craig said, "this the famous hazing wall everyone talks about?" Wayne and I exchanged looks. Every new worker said the same thing, every single one. "Sit," Wayne said, finally looking up. His eyes had developed this quality where they never quite focused on what they were looking at, always seeing something just behind or beside it. "Caleb will explain." I handed Craig the laminated card, the original 5 rules. He read it with that familiar half-smile, the one that said he was humoring us, playing along with what was obviously an elaborate prank. "Wildlife watching me," he read aloud. "Horses at night, don't answer phones." He looked up. "This is creative, I'll give you that. Better than the fake snake in the toolbox routine they pulled in Texas." "It's not hazing," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. 3 weeks of bad sleep had stripped away my ability to ease people into this. "Follow the rules or disappear. Your choice." Craig laughed. Actually laughed. "Disappear? Come on, man. What is this, a Stephen King novel?" From outside came the rhythmic groan of pump jacks, the sound that never stopped, day or night. Except sometimes it did stop, and that was worse. I walked to the window, checking the shadows around the equipment. all falling the right direction, for now. "Show him the logs," Wayne said. I pulled out Mildred's binder, inches thick now, filled with her precise handwriting documenting every encounter, every disappearance, every new behavior. The pages from the last 3 weeks were different, more frantic, with drawings in the margins of things that shouldn't exist. Sketches of the integrated workers, their nervous systems threaded through machinery. Maps of underground spaces that connected in impossible ways. And on the newest pages, drawings of things even worse. Craig flipped through, his smile fading slightly. "Okay, this is elaborate. I'll give you that." "Page 247, Wayne said. Craig turned to it. A photo was taped there. Nash's boots in the dirt, the note visible inside. Below it, Mildred had written, "Supervisor Nash Singh, employed 6 years, 3 months. Vanished investigating anomalous lights, southern sector. Note suggests internal infiltration. No body recovered." "Photoshop's getting good these days," Craig said, but his voice had lost some confidence. Emily walked in then, medical kit in hand, and I saw Craig's attention shift immediately. Emily had that effect, competent, attractive, normal-looking enough to make you forget where you were, until you noticed the haunted look in her eyes, the way she counted her medical supplies obsessively, the burns on her hands from treating wounds that shouldn't exist. "New guy?" she asked. Then to Craig, "Let me guess, you think it's all hazing?" "Smart man," Craig said, trying to regain his swagger. Emily pulled up her sleeve, revealing a scar that ran from wrist to elbow. The tissue was wrong, twisted in a spiral pattern with smaller scars branching off like roots or veins. 3 weeks ago, something that looked like a deer but moved like water tried to pull me into a storage tank. The only reason I'm alive is because Caleb remembered Rule 7. Metal burns them if it's been in direct sunlight for more than 4 hours. He hit it with a hot pipe wrench. Craig stared at the scar. You couldn't fake tissue damage like that. The way it spiraled, the way the light seemed to bend around it slightly. "What are you people drilling for here?" he asked, his voice smaller now. "Oil," Wayne said. "Special oil. Oil that sells for 10 times market price to buyers who don't officially exist. Oil that might not be oil at all, but something else that flows like oil, burns like oil, but does things oil shouldn't do." I walked over to my additions on the wall, the ones I'd written after learning things the hard way. Rule 18, never trust voices you recognize, especially loved ones. Rule 19, count the shadows around people, more than one means run. Rule 20, if oil flows upward through the pipes, evacuate immediately. Rule 21, the phone calls get worse each time. Never answer twice. "Look," I told Craig, "I was you 3 weeks ago. Thought it was bullshit. Thought everyone was crazy or in on some joke. Then I watched something wearing my supervisor's face try to lead me into the dark. Then I heard my dead father calling from underground. Then I saw riders on horses that weren't horses, wearing human skin as cloaks." Craig was quiet for a moment. Then, "If it's so dangerous, why stay?" Wayne laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Because if we leave, they send new crews. People who don't know the rules. Families looking for good pay. They'd last maybe a week before." He trailed off, staring at something none of us could see. "Before they get integrated," Emily finished. "Absorbed into the machinery, their consciousness trapped but aware, their bodies repurposed into components. The company knows," I added. "They factor our deaths into their budget. We're listed as equipment depreciation in their reports." Craig stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, the field looked normal. Pump jacks nodding, equipment scattered around, a few workers visible in the distance. You'd never know that underneath. Something vast and hungry was waiting. "This is insane," he said. "Yes," Wayne agreed. "That's the most accurate thing you've said." That night, I took Craig to his assigned trailer, number 9, recently vacated after Hendricks answered a phone call from his dead mother, and walked into the prairie. I helped him carry his bags, noting how he kept checking behind us, how his earlier confidence had evaporated. "The rules," he said as we walked. "They really work?" "Sometimes, for a while. Then the things below learn, adapt. What worked last month might kill you tomorrow." I pointed to the scratches on his trailer door, symbols carved by the previous occupant. Hendricks thought these would protect him. Religious symbols from 6 different faiths didn't matter. The phone calls don't care what you believe. As if on cue, a phone rang somewhere. Not from any trailer, but from underground, muffled by dirt and pipes. My father's ringtone, the Johnny Cash song distorted by distance and earth. "Is that—" Craig started. "Every night," I said, getting closer. "Started 3 weeks ago, maybe 100 feet down. Now it sounds like it's just below the surface." Craig's hand shook as he unlocked his trailer. "What happens when it reaches the top? I don't know. But I've been marking the depth by the sound. At the current rate, it'll break through in about 6 days. Inside his trailer, I showed him the important things. The locks, 3 deadbolts, 1 chain, the emergency supplies, flares that burned too bright, salt that wasn't quite salt, a mirror that reflected things differently, and the notebook where he should document anything unusual. Never trust what you see after 10 p.m., I said. Count fingers, check shadows, watch how things move. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And Craig, I paused at his door. When you hear your loved ones calling, and you will, remember they're already gone. Whatever's using their voices just wants you to join them. He nodded, trying to look tough, but I saw the fear creeping in. Good. Fear might keep him alive. Walking back to my trailer, I passed Mildred's window. She was still awake, writing in her logs, documenting today's strangeness. She'd added a new section recently, internal manifestations. Workers showing signs of change from the inside out. Wayne's white hair was just the beginning. Emily's medical scans of herself showed structures growing that shouldn't exist. And me? I'd started understanding the sounds from below, recognizing patterns that almost formed words. The pump jacks groaned their rhythm. Somewhere, something that might have been a coyote howled, the sound cutting off abruptly as if something had grabbed it mid-cry. The security lights flickered in sequence. Normal, according to maintenance, though maintenance never came at night anymore. In my trailer, I sat on the bed and pulled out my own notebook, the one I didn't share with anyone. Inside were the real rules, the ones too terrible to post on the wall. The company isn't drilling for oil. They're feeding something that produces it. The integrated workers aren't dead, just transformed into something useful. The phone calls aren't trying to lure us. They're teaching us a language we're not meant to know. Nash didn't disappear. He went to negotiate. We're not bait, we're crops, and harvest season is coming. 3 weeks since the horses. 3 weeks since Nash vanished. 3 weeks of training new arrivals, watching them cycle through disbelief to terror to resignation. Craig would either adapt or disappear, and someone new would take his place. The oil would keep flowing upward through impossible spaces. The company would keep sending checks, and we'd keep following rules that were really just suggestions to things that had already decided our fate. That night, my father's voice called from maybe 10 feet underground, so clear I could hear him breathing between words. He was saying coordinates again, but now I understood them. They led to a place under the field where the oil came from, where the integrated workers sang in harmony with machines, where Nash was learning to speak with things that had no mouths. 6 days until the voice reached the surface. 6 days to decide if I'd run and condemn others to take my place, or stay and become part of something vast and patient and hungry. I marked another day off the calendar, noting that Craig Gonzalez had arrived intact, shadow singular, fingers countable, for now.